Hi there, my name is Brittney and I'm with the SMNP Reviews team, and today we're going to be going over some study tips that can help you in preparing for your exams. Sometimes studying for these exams can feel really daunting, and breaking it down into smaller, more manageable pieces can really help if you're feeling overwhelmed with all the information. In this video, we're going to review some methods to break down the study process. We're going to discuss practice questions, the role of memorization in studying, topics that are good for using flashcards in your study, and how to find out what topics need a deeper review, and how to plan out studying for the timeframes you have available before the test. So first things first, let's talk about timeline. When studying for either exam, it can really help to have a date to work toward. You want to give yourself enough time to review the information that you don't feel comfortable with, but make sure that you give yourself a date that will push you as well. Setting a date can really help us structure our study plan. We may never feel 100% ready to take the exam, but it is important to remember that we don't have to get every question right. We don't have to know everything. The exam is geared toward evaluating competence and safety of a new nurse practitioner. So set that date, make a goal, and stick to your plan. Okay, so once we have a date and we have pinpointed the areas that we need to spend a little more time with, it is a good time to make a plan. Take out a calendar and plan out your study time. We are way more likely to be successful if we make sure to plan our study into our day instead of trying to cram it in at the end of a busy day. The idea is to keep it simple. Break these areas down into more manageable sections. Keep the review for the day to 1 to 2 content areas. This keeps the study for the day in more manageable groups instead of making you feel like you need to spend 8 hours a day studying before your exam. It also makes it less likely that you will feel burned out before taking your exam. For each topic that needs more in-depth review, go through the notes and the study guides, schedule more time with the material that is harder for you to get down. Really cement the material by doing practice questions in those areas. An example of a weekly study plan could be something like this. Let's say Monday, you take a full-length exam and review the rationales, and you note the weaker areas in your exam. And Tuesday, you start with those weaker areas. Let's say, for example, on the full-length exam, you didn't score well on cardiovascular and respiratory. Tuesday would be a good day to study those areas, study the study guides, notes, do 20 to 30 practice questions in cardiovascular and respiratory. Wednesday, you might want to spend more time with a different topic like women's health and do 20 to 30 practice questions in women's health. Thursday, maybe you want to just do some general practice questions. 20 to 30 questions, make flashcards for topics that you're having trouble with, such as ortho-neuro, cranial nerves, abdominal signs, things like that. Friday, maybe you could review pediatric notes and do 20 to 30 practice questions in pediatrics. And then Saturday, you could do another full-length practice exam, see how you're feeling, see if you've improved in those areas and where you might need to adjust your study, and review the material for the week. Remember to keep it simple. We don't want you to overdo, so we don't want you to study 8 hours a day. It's a good rule of thumb to just keep it to 1 to 2 hours each day. All right, now let's talk about practice questions. It is so important to make sure we're including time to complete practice questions with any study plan we've come up with. The more practice questions we do, the more likely we are to see something similar on the exam. When considering what to do for practice questions, it's best usually to stick to 1 to 2 trusted sources. This can keep you from feeling overwhelmed with all the information, but also give you a variety to work with. There are other skills that can be developed when going through practice questions. This is a great opportunity to practice reading questions carefully. It is really easy to get ahead of ourselves, especially when that anxiety is high, and to miss a key word or key information in the question that can change the answer completely. So while doing practice questions, take your time. Practice reading the questions all the way through. Sometimes it's helpful, especially with longer questions, to read the last sentence first and then go through the question again and get the details. Another aspect of careful question reading is reading all the answer options. We can go through the question quickly and pick the answer we think is correct, But if we take the time to go through the answer options, they can tip us off to a detail or something we may have missed in the question. So take the time to read the question carefully and read all the answer options. Another thing to focus on when doing practice questions is to trust your gut. Try not to go back and change answers. Practice questions are a great opportunity to build this skill. Another key with practice questions is that it can be a great way to gauge what subjects might need a more in-depth review in your study plan. For example, let's say you complete practice questions and you score really well in cardiovascular and not as well in GI. That is a good indicator that more time in your study plan should be spent studying, reviewing notes, study guides in GI. Completing practice questions by content area can really help us focus our study time in a more efficient way. As a side note, reading rationales while doing practice questions is another great way to supplement your review. Make sure you always review those rationales. One thing that many students wonder is how to remember all the ortho maneuvers, which maneuver for which injury, or abdominal signs, how to perform them and what sign indicates which condition. Cranial nerves, pairing the number with how you assess, Erickson stages, pediatric milestones, all these different topics. With topics like these, it's good to use flashcards or memorization techniques to get them straight in your mind. Once you have that base information down, it is easier to move forward from there to the deeper questions. For example, let's say you get a question about how to assess cranial nerve 2. Once you have that base information memorized, you know that cranial nerve 2 is the optic nerve and it is assessed with the Snellen chart. It makes that question much less stressful to answer. Remembering medications for the exam can be a little daunting, but there are a few things that can make it a little easier. There is no way we're going to remember every single medication and every single side effect for the exam, and you're not expected to do that. On the exam questions, you'll be given generic names and brand names of the medications. However, we need to know the medication classes as well. We need to know which drugs fit into which classes, and when we do that, it is easier to keep the major side effects straight. For example, let's look at SGLT2 inhibitors. We know that SGLT2 inhibitors are cardioprotective. We know that they have the added side effect of causing increased urine output. If we can remember that these medications are the ones that end in Flozin, when we get a question asking about the medication canagliflozin or Invokana, it is easier for us to come up with the major benefits and side effects. Knowing the ends of the medication names in each class is a lot easier than trying to remember every single medication name along with benefits, side effects, contraindications, and black box warnings. All right, let's talk about practice exams. Practice exams are a great tool to help us prepare for the exam day. They can help us know how close we are to being ready to take the actual exam, and a good rule of thumb is to shoot for a score above 70% on practice exams before taking your exam. Practice exams can also be used as a dry run for anything you're planning on doing the day of your exam. So if you're planning on using a dump sheet during the exam, practice using your dump sheet. Practice how you want to set it up and use it during those practice exams. It's also a great opportunity to practice when you want to take breaks or if you want to take breaks. They're a great way to build mental endurance so you can push through and not feel fatigued at the end of your test. Making that practice exam as much like your exam day as possible can really help decrease the anxiety level on your exam day. While the study process can feel a little scary and daunting, it does not need to be complicated. The key is to set a realistic date for your exam, note your weaker areas that you need to work on, organize your time, and practice, practice, practice. You will be surprised as you go through how much you already know. If you put in the work, you will feel much more confident on the big exam day. That is it for study tips. Remember, keep it simple. You got this.